President Trump calls for Biden-appointed Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook to resign. The potential firing of Lisa Cook comes amid reports of a housing official accusing the Fed governor of mortgage fraud. StoneX senior advisor John Hilsenrath joins us now to discuss, along with TMX Group's Christine Short. John, great to see you, as always, sir. So let's get into this. So Trump targeting Fed Governor Lisa Cook, calls on her to resign. This follows his accusation of mortgage fraud. John, you saw that post by the president. You saw the headline. What did you make of it?
Well, there's a lot to unpack here. So the head of the Federal Housing Finance Association, which oversees Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, is accusing a Fed governor, Lisa Cook, of mortgage fraud. The allegation is that she listed two different residences as her primary residence when filing mortgage applications, and he referred her to the Justice Department for fraud. That's not allowed. This is, in my mind, a serious allegation, but there's a lot of facts here that we don't know. There are cases, for instance, where a person could list two homes as primary residences, for instance, if they're co-signing for a dependent, an elder, or a child. So we just don't know the facts. It seems like a pretty aggressive move to refer her straight to the Justice Department. The undercurrent here is that she was a Biden appointee. President Trump wants to get rid of Biden appointees on the Fed board, put his own people on there, and push for a more easy, lower interest rate monetary policy. So this is part of that bigger narrative.
And it was interesting because I did see Bill Pulte, the FHFA director, in an interview today, John, and he was making the case that he said they got a tip. I believe he called this a serious issue. He did, as you know, allege mortgage fraud here that she was claiming. He says alleging primary residence, two places at once. His point was, John, that John can't do that and Josh can't do that and Lisa Cook can't do that. And so how do we, and he also did, John, say he thinks she should step down. I believe he said the word quickly. As we try to game out how we think this goes, John, can we say now or no? We have to kind of see what does Pam Bondi at the DOJ do with it?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on the facts of the case. So if she did that and there were no exculpatory circumstances and it was mortgage fraud, then like that looks like a pretty serious offense. You're not allowed to do that. That could be seen as mortgage fraud and potentially even tax fraud if that's the way she reported residences on her tax forms. But we can't say that that's the fact, because it is not always and everywhere the case that you can't list two residences as primary residences. I gave two examples where if you're co-signing for a dependent, it might be a case where you have one residence and then you're moving and buying another residence. That's also, a special circumstance. So I don't think that we could, I don't think it's responsible to make allegations without knowing all of the facts. And that's where Bill Pulte might be moving a little bit aggressively here, unless he knows more than he laid out in that letter. I think we need to find out what were the circumstances of those mortgages that she applied for back in 2021.
And Christine, I want to bring you in here as well, because you saw the president's post, Christine. You saw the headlines. What did you make of it?
Yeah, maybe no surprise here. It's not the first person that President Trump has come after in the Fed as they look to fill the Fed leadership with folks that will push looser monetary policy. He's looking to expedite the Senate confirmation on Stephen Miran as a Fed governor in hopes that interest rates will be cut. That's something that he has had a bone to pick with Fed Chair Jerome Powell. And judging by today's FOMC meeting minutes that just came out a couple hours ago, most members of the Fed seem quite hawkish. I think only Chris Wallace and Michelle Bowman, of course, he is one of the top picks to take over Fed Chairman Jerome Powell's spot when his term comes up in May, and Michelle Bowman were the two that said that the risks of lower employment and sort of the labor market outweighed those of inflation, but really 9 of the 12 Fed members were still very much focused on inflation. So it makes you wonder what the probability of a September cut. The CME Group's FedWatch tool still has it around 80%, but you wonder after those minutes came out, as well as the Jackson Hole speech that we're all waiting for on Friday, how that will will change the probability of rate cuts for the rest of this year.
John, Christine mentioning Jackson Hole. Of course, I have. You got to ask you, Jay Powell, Jackson Hole Friday. What do you expect to hear, John? What are you listening for?
Well, so I think he's going to open the door to a rate cut, very slightly open the door in September. And the reason for that is, yes, those Fed minutes that came out today were somewhat hawkish. The majority of people at the Fed, when it met 3 weeks ago, thought the risk to inflation was greater than the risk of a weak job market. But since that Fed meeting, the Labor Department reported very weak jobs numbers and downward revisions to hiring in May and June. And so I think that tilts the scales for the Fed a little bit towards a rate cut in September. But however, I think the market has also gotten ahead of itself because it's now pricing in 3 rate cuts by the end of the year, 50-50 odds of another rate cut in October. And, I think as we saw in the minutes today, there's still a lot of reason to be concerned about inflation and upward pressure on inflation. And I don't think Powell, he has to acknowledge that the job market looks weaker today than it did the last time that the Fed met. But he can't all of a sudden do a pivot and say, all right, we're now aggressively cutting interest rates, because the inflation numbers have also gotten a little bit worse depending on which numbers you look at. So the Fed is in a very difficult situation right now, putting aside all the political pressure it faces. The economy on both sides of its mandate, employment and inflation, is not cooperating with where the Fed wants to see it go.
All right, we will be watching closely. I know you will be too, John. Thank you as always for your time.
Thank you.